She was not a priest, not a prophet, not a warrior. She lived in the walls of Jericho, a city destined to fall. She was a woman whose profession marked her as an outcast. And yet Rahab's courage and faith would alter the course of history. This is the story of Rahab, the spy who shaped sacred history and the woman whose scarlet cord still speaks across the centuries. Jericho. The name itself echoes through millennia. Believed to be one of the oldest inhabited cities in the world, its main feature was its defense. Massive, imposing walls that screamed invincibility. Life inside this Canaanite hub was a mix of bustling trade, complex religious practices, and the harsh realities of survival. For a woman like Rahab, whose house was strategically built right into the city wall, her profession was a means to an end in a world with few options. It placed her on the fringes of society, but it also gave her a unique vantage point, a constant flow of information from travelers and merchants. Outside those walls, a nation was on the move. The Israelites, after 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, were finally at the doorstep of the promised land. Their leader, Joshua, knew that Jericho was the first, and perhaps most formidable, obstacle. To understand the city, Joshua sent 2 spies to scout its defenses. Their mission was dangerous, a venture deep into enemy territory, and where did they find refuge? In the home of Rahab, this wasn't a random choice. In the ancient world, an inn run by a woman like Rahab was a discreet and practical place for travelers to stay, a place where strangers could blend in. But their presence did not go unnoticed. Word quickly reached the king of Jericho that Israelite spies were within his city, and his soldiers were dispatched to Rahab's door. This was the moment of truth. With soldiers at her door, Rahab faced a choice that would determine her fate. She didn't hesitate. She had already hidden the men under stalks of flax drying on her roof. When confronted, she looked the soldiers in the eye and lied, sending them on a futile chase out of the city. This was more than just helping a stranger. It was a profound act of defiance against her king and her city. Rahab wasn't a passive observer. She was a quick-thinking strategist, risking her own life for men she had just met. But why? What would compel a woman to betray her entire city for 2 foreign spies? Her own words, spoken to the men after the soldiers had left, reveal a stunning secret. She tells them, "I know that the Lord has given you this land. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt. The Lord your God, He is God in heaven above and on the earth below." Think about that. Here is a Canaanite woman, living in a city that worships a pantheon of gods, declaring her absolute faith in the God of Israel. She had heard the stories of His power and she believed. This wasn't a deathbed conversion. It was a proactive declaration made while her own city was still standing strong. In this moment, Rahab's courage wasn't just in hiding the spies, but in fundamentally shifting her allegiance. She was placing her entire future in the hands of a God she had only heard about, a God her people considered an enemy. In return for her help, the spies made a solemn promise. They would spare her and her entire family when the city fell. But they needed a sign. She was to tie a scarlet cord in her window, the very window from which she would help them escape. This scarlet cord would be the marker, a symbol of salvation for all who gathered inside her home. It's a powerful image, echoing the Passover story where the blood of a lamb on the doorposts saved the Israelites in Egypt. For Rahab, this simple red rope hanging from her window became a beacon of her faith and a covenant of protection. The day of reckoning arrived. For 6 days, the Israelite army marched in silence around Jericho. On the 7th day, they circled it 7 times. Then, at Joshua's command, the priests blew their trumpets, the people shouted, and the impossible happened. The massive, unconquerable walls of Jericho crumbled to the ground. But amid the dust and destruction, one section of the wall miraculously remained standing, the part holding Rahab's house, with the scarlet cord blowing in the window. Just as promised, she and her family were brought out to safety. In a single day, Rahab went from being an outcast in a doomed city to being an insider, adopted into the people of Israel. The prostitute became a matriarch. Her story didn't end there. In Jewish tradition, Rahab is often celebrated as a prime example of repentance and transformation. Some rabbinic legends even say she was one of the 4 most beautiful women in history and that she later married Joshua himself. Whether legend or not, these stories show the deep respect she earned. She wasn't remembered for her past, but for her faith and courage, with her descendants said to include prophets and priests. This reverence for Rahab carries powerfully into the New Testament. In the very first chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, her name appears in the genealogy of Jesus. Think of the significance. A Canaanite woman with a scandalous past is listed as a direct ancestor of King David, and ultimately, of the Messiah. The book of Hebrews praises her as a hero of faith, while the book of James highlights her actions as proof of that faith. She became the ultimate model for God's grace, a testament that His plan of salvation includes everyone, especially the most unexpected people from the most unlikely places. Over the centuries, Rahab's story has been interpreted and reimagined. The scarlet cord has been seen as a symbol of survival, covenant, and salvation. Feminist theologians see her as a powerful survivor, a strategist who used her wit and courage to protect her household. Liberation theology views her as a symbol of the outsider being welcomed, a powerful statement of inclusion. From medieval paintings to modern novels, she is continuously portrayed as a figure of both human brokenness and divine redemption. Rahab was not a queen, nor a prophet, nor a warrior. She was a woman on the margins, but she dared to believe, to act, to risk everything. And in doing so, she changed history. From the walls of Jericho to the genealogy of Jesus, Rahab's scarlet cord stretches across time, reminding us that faith is not about where you begin, but the choices you make. Rahab was more than a spy, she was a heroine of faith, and her story still speaks today. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories that shape our world. We'll see you next time.